Hey everyone, welcome to the Modern Government Podcast. In today's episode, Zaizi CEO Anga joins Founder Hack's session as a special guest, where he has spent the last 18 years helping modernize the government through secure, user-centered digital services. In this episode, Anga reflects the challenges and lessons of being an entrepreneur and shares his journey at Zaizi. So if you're passionate about leadership and what it really takes to build modern government services, this is an episode you don't want to miss. You are now listening to the Modern Government Podcast.
Our podcast where we like to share something we've seen, something we've read, and something we've learned. It starts, as always, to say a massive hello to Mr. Anthony Enright.
Hello. Good to see you both.
Hello. And to welcome our guest for this episode. Aingaran Pillai is CEO and founder of Zaizi, a business he founded over 18 years ago. He has led that business through thick and thin, and today has transformed it into one of the leading specialist technology providers into public sector and government. Famously, some of the most challenging spaces to build digital things. And we are very excited to have him with us today. A massive welcome to Anga.
Thanks a lot, Ben. And thank you for that kind introduction.
Not at all.
That was a great introduction, wasn't it?
Did you like that? It was good, wasn't it? It was, yeah. Well,
I want one of those. I want one of those introductions.
You'll have to ask very, very nicely, Mr. Enright. We know you so well. So, Anga, look, as ever, I know you've selected something you've seen, something you've read, something you've learned to kind of share some of your entrepreneurial learning, but you had quite a strong theme, I felt. Do you want to give us a sense of what connects these as learnings for you?
Yeah, the theme I had was grit, is what I wanted to talk about. And it'll come across the various bits you asked me to talk about, seen, read, and learned, is that if you keep running your business through thick and thin, eventually success will find you, I think. My experience, I think sometimes people give up too early. So it's how do you keep plowing through till you find that success?
Wow. That's going up on my wall. I've got a wall here of those that know me. I've got a wall here of quotes. Success will find you. I love that because I resonate with that so much. That is amazing.
Fantastic. Will success find you? Well, look, I think we want to get into this because I think this is a fascinating theme and one that I'm sure would resonate with almost anyone who's ever made the very dubious decision to start a business for themselves. So without further ado, Anga, we'd love to know, what have you seen?
The thing I've seen was, and I'd summarize it as culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it was at one of the first companies that I worked for after graduating. I was employee number 4. The company was going through a massive scaling, and it was started by a psychologist, the CEO, the 2 co-founders, but one was a psychologist. And the thing that he made sure was that the team, the people he was hiring, they all got on, and we'd go to the pub every Thursday and Friday, and the company would pay for drinks. It's just made sure that the team bonded and really got on well with each other. And I'm still remain best friends with a lot of the people I worked with 20 years ago. And that team went through quite a fast scale up. We were tripling in size every 12 months. And that experience taught me that if you could build a strong team, they could help you achieve anything, especially within a company.
Fantastic. What do you reckon? I know, Anthony, you're a very big advocate for this thing called culture. What do you reckon?
Culture, clearly culture is so important, but it's also being clear what you want from that culture, isn't it? Because I think what I'm really interested in, Anga, is how do you get that balance between having a really strong culture where people want to come and work with you and for you, and you have that bond, and you also then continue to achieve that growth and scale. How do you get that balance between having a really strong I guess the question is, what does that really look like? What does that bond look like? How does that bond equate to growth and scale?
That's a good question. When I started the company and I built a team, and I was very conscious about the people we hired, that winning culture, that mindset was just there naturally. We were scaling, we were growing fast, everybody was excited and, really working passionately to make the company a success. And we didn't have to think too hard about it. It just happened. Where as you scaled up is when the culture starts changing. You start as we got to about 60, 70, 80 plus people, you bring all these other people in and the culture shifts. And then ensuring that we retain that culture is you've got to work at it. And we did a lot of work internally and how we would do that. And to your question about how do you retain that bond as we scaled up and when we brought new people in, especially in post-COVID and lockdown, lots of remote working, was telling stories. People love stories about those early days, the success, the wins, how well the team performed. And it's those stories, and it's the personal stories. We work in public sector. You don't get many. There's no hospitality and any of that extra bit. But our team had done a tremendous job on one project, and a government customer invited the couple of the team members to the Queen's afternoon tea as a thank you. It's those are the little things. And when you tell those stories, people go, "Great! I want to be invited. I'm going to work." And it's that. And we have to keep repeating the stories. But yeah, it's not easy.
And is that the role that you feel you've played, Aingaran, in terms of are you the chief storyteller? Because I've heard this, right? As CEO, chief storyteller. Is that something that resonates?
It does. And this comes back to the grit, and I'll come back to what I learned. Yes, that is the main responsibility of the CEO, is the cheerleader, the storyteller, living, making sure that the culture stays alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important, isn't it? I mean, I see that in a lot of other businesses where, sometimes the storyteller, the owner of the business feels like a stuck record at times and feels like, but you've got to keep repeating, you've got to keep inspiring. And certainly when you get to the scale, I mean, how many people are you at now, Anga?
160 people.
Yeah, 160 people. Wow. Right.
Wow.
So how do you keep those stories? How do you keep that culture alive? And I guess once you've got that culture set at a certain number, you're hoping that people come in and this is what it's like to work around here. This is obvious. And people just then really find their feet around this is what it's like to work around here. And it's just a knock-on effect. I mean, do you see that? Do you find that?
Yeah. So at our scale, you've got to then tell the leaders, the other leaders, and the leaders, everybody repeating the stories, because that will inspire the new people coming in, the junior people coming in, and you've got to tell them. And they've got to tell their stories, and you create new stories.
That's the piece, isn't it? Creating new stories. Because what I always find is that and I'm funny enough, I'm working with somebody else at the moment who's looking to become a coach, and they're talking about and they're observing and they're observing my stories and what are my stories, and they're like, and they coming to me afterwards saying, "I'm going to have to use your stories," and I said, "That's okay, because you're going to do that as you create your own." Like, how can you create your own stories around the culture so everybody in the business has their story? So when you come to that celebration, or you come to that meeting or that check-in, it's like, what's your story? Has anybody got a new story? I love that point about, you've got to create your own story. So it's the CEO, it's the founder, it's the visionary story to begin with. Then for every employee, what's your story? What's your story aligned to our purpose and why and our culture?
Mm. And I completely resonates that it's hard as it grows, right? Because, I love the work by, and I'll credit it, Daniel Priestley at Dent, in terms of, I think is where I got this from, that every company starts as like the Three Musketeers, right? The early days, one for all and all for one, Three Musketeers. That's kind of easy, right? That's kind of easy. And then you become this sort of gang, right? A little gang, 10, 15 people. We're a gang. It's all of us together. Off we go. But at some point, if you win, you become a company. You have functions, you have separation, you have different that's where it's tricky, right? And I think what really is inspiring about your story is that playbook of how you've managed to do that, man. You've managed to keep that sense of culture, that sense of identity alive through that transition, which I think is, from what I hear, is always the tough bit, right? When you've got under 20 people in a company, well, you can all sit around one table and have a chat. Suddenly you get to 30, 40, you can't do that anymore. You can't have everybody in the one space. Not everyone can be heard on every topic. And I love the idea that by having those stories and cascading them and building leaders of leaders, you can preserve it. Fantastic stuff.
The key thing here is it's a constant thing you've got to keep doing, and it's not easy. There are days where, I haven't got the energy or the, where I have to come and be positive, but you have to pull yourself up because that's what they expect.
That's where the grit comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Building culture with consistency and grit. We like it very much. Well, look, a time waits for no one. Let's move on. I would love to hear, Anga, what have you read that's been a source of inspiration for you?
The thing I read it when the company was going through a tough period, and someone had recommended the book. It's The Hard Things About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And there was a passage in there called The Struggle. And I read it, and it resonated so much with me that reading it, I just broke down in tears and cried. Because when I read it, it felt like weight was lifted and that I wasn't alone and there were other people. And when times are tough and every company goes through a tough period, I go back to that passage just to help me pick myself up and look for that grit to carry on. And if you're okay with it, I'd love to read it.
We would love to hear it.
Yes, please.
The struggle is when you wonder why you started the company in the first place. The struggle is when people ask you, why don't you quit? And you don't know the answer. The struggle is when your employees think you're lying and you think they might be right. The struggle is when food loses its taste. The struggle is when you don't believe you should be the CEO of your own company. The struggle is when you know that you're in over your head and you know that you cannot be replaced. The struggle is when everybody thinks you're an idiot, but nobody will fire you. The struggle is where self-doubt becomes self-hatred. The struggle is when you're having a conversation with someone and you can't hear a word that they are saying because all you can hear is the struggle. The struggle is when you want the pain to stop. The struggle is unhappiness. The struggle is when you go on vacation to feel better and you feel worse. The struggle is when you're surrounded by people and you're all alone. The struggle has no mercy. The struggle is a land of broken promises and crushed dreams. The struggle is cold sweat. The struggle is where your guts boil so much that you feel you're going to split blood. The struggle is not failure, but it causes failure, especially if you're weak. Always if you're weak. Most people are not strong enough. Every great entrepreneur from Steve Jobs to Mark Zuckerberg went through the struggle. And struggle they did. So you are not alone. But that does not mean that you will make it. You may not make it. That is why it's the struggle. The struggle is where greatness comes from.
Wow. Follow that.
Follow that. I'm not going next. That is so powerful.
Isn't it just? Yeah. Isn't it just? I mean, I have huge respect for Ben Horowitz, the book, and what it did, because so often what we're exposed to, I think, as entrepreneurs is people at the end of the journey who have won. Mm-hmm. I think a bit like many things in life, at the end of the marathon, you probably don't remember how it felt halfway round when your guts were boiling and you thought you were going to die. You just remember the triumph at the end. And it's an incredible thing that Ben Horowitz did with that, because it's the only time I can think of where someone's managed to bottle the experience of getting there. And it is so resonant because, yes, it's that moment where all the values and the culture just feels like it's turned to ash in your mouth because the challenge seems so big and too big, and you just have to turn up and keep going. But it's a powerful piece, Aingaran, and thank you for bringing it.
I find that when I'm talking to people about my experience and my background, that it sounds like this fairy tale. It sounds wonderful. It doesn't mean to. It's just that I'm so used to sort of telling the story around my background, what I've done and how and hopefully some detail about how I got there, but it just sounds like this fairy tale. It sounds like, oh, well, you're at the other side now. It sounds wonderful. And it's like, no, it really isn't. It really isn't. It's really hard. And that passage there just sums that up. And I think for me, I mean, the question I've got for you in a moment, Anger, is which bit of that resonates with you most? Because for me, in hearing you read that out so beautifully, is that I think I can remember the days of feeling that. And like today, I don't feel like it's a struggle. But come tomorrow or Sunday or Monday, I might feel it's a struggle in that particular one way. Which element of that do you resonate with the most?
Because I've run the company for 18 years, it's had its various ups and downs and the different challenges, and we've had all sorts of challenges. So when I read it, the thing that stuck me, and I read this about 7-8 years ago, was that we've gone through all those various bits and pieces where, you go on vacation, you don't feel it. It's like, oh, tick. And, and you've got to give and we talked about culture and how do you, when you have a strong culture, how do you give bad news? You don't want to scare them, but you can't lie to them. And again, it comes to that thing because you can't always be upbeat because they know you're lying. So they catch you out. So all of those. But the thing that I guess ultimately what I would love reading about that and resonates is struggle is where greatness comes from. So everybody who starts a business will go through it, and success will come by getting through the struggle. So, and there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to keep working at it.
Mm-hmm. One of my little mantras is there's always tomorrow. And that's not to say that tomorrow will be better, but it'll be different. And different is good.
Yes.
I always think that's the thing I try to look for is getting stuck is always a risk, right? But maybe our job when we're leading or we've founded something is just to make sure that a difference keeps coming. And when we get a difference that's better, we jump on it and cling on to it for all it's worth, and then keep pushing on that door. But there will always be a tomorrow, right? And when we go to bed at night, I like to try and clear my mind and go, okay, what's done is done. Can't change it.
Yeah.
Can't change it. But tomorrow will arrive in 6 or 7 hours, depending on how much sleep we're allowed to have that night, or 3. But tomorrow will come, and we'll have our wits and our capacity to make decisions and choices and try and engender difference.
Yeah.
Actually, being an entrepreneur can be a very lonely place. And when you read that, I think the power that can give to people is to be able to say, yeah, you're not alone. Like if you want to achieve greatness, unfortunately, you have to go through, if not all of this, then most of it. And I like that idea. Whether I like the idea, but I kind of resonate with the idea of a tick list. Yep, I've done that. So, Anger, as you were reading that out, it's like, wow, that piece resonates more than the other. But it's almost like a checklist of going, if you're going to achieve greatness, if you're going to be able to grow and scale your business and achieve whatever it is you set out to achieve, you've got to go through most of that. Yeah. And that's the untold story, isn't it? And that's why I love this pod, because we're hearing about real, true life stories and not the wonderful sort of almost Hollywood TED Talk now. It's like, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
True.
And with a strong team and a culture, there's help and, like sharing the problems and the challenges with the team help. But ultimately, you are the one having to make those difficult decisions.
It falls to you. Well, I'll share one more reflection on this because we could talk about this for hours. But my final reflection, because one of the things that I think has always given me some comfort was actually inspired by a quote from, of all things, Ratatouille, the Pixar Disney film, right?
I think this is the second time you're about to quote Ratatouille
I'm
on this pod.
I'm probably going to quote Ratatouille again, but I'll paraphrase. But the thing is, anyone who creates anything or does anything, any leader, is always going to be beset by critics, right? Critics are important, right? Without critics, leaders get ideas above their station, act awfully. We need the critics. They're really, really important. But if you are the leader, you're going to be constantly subjected to critics. And the thing we've got to cling to is that the problem is any act of creation depends on that leader doing it. You've got to put your head above the pulpit with the risk that someone's going to shoot you in the head. And they probably will, or try. Mm-hmm. But your act of creation inherently does have more value than the criticism that designates it as junk, because it's a creation. And I like to cling on to that look, we are creating things, we are putting ourselves out there for the world to tear us down, and good, okay, do it. But we're going to keep creating because that's who we are. And I think there's an ability in it somewhere. But Anga, thank you so much for bringing that. It's incredibly powerful.
And I think that's the first time we've actually had somebody read something like that to us, actually read to us. That's wonderful. We should do that more often. Fantastic.
Amazing. Let's move on, Anga, because I'd love to hear from all of this. What have you learned?
It's a good question about what have I learned. I would say I'm still learning. But the key thing for me was being a single entrepreneur, so I'm a single founder. It's very hard. It is very lonely and very hard because I haven't got a co-founder to bounce ideas off, to talk to about some of the challenges and the decisions, and or even celebrate the success and the wins. I do have a great team around me, but when it's as the founder, it's quite hard, and it's been difficult at times.
I can relate to it. I mean, I think it's lonely even when you have partners, right? Because there's always that dynamic between yourself and your partners where there's agendas, there's issues. Again, it's not always possible to be completely honest, and probably not appropriate to be completely honest with those you're in partnership in business with. There's always areas that are held back, but that's lonely enough. But I can't imagine when it's just you. That must be really challenging. What do you think, Ant?
I wonder if it's one of those situations, when you deal with somebody who's got a services business and they just wish they had a product. And then you go to somebody who's got a product and they wish they had a services business. And I wonder if that's a little bit true here, is that when you're on your own, you wish you had a partner. And when you have a partner, sometimes you wish you were on your own. And there's pros and cons to both. But I think to both of your points is that it can be lonely regardless. And you really require that grit and that determination on those days is to be able to, how do you get up in the morning? How do you go again? And how do you strive? And I guess that's the question I've got for you. I am setting you up a bit here, Anga, because I think I know the answer. But when you're on your own like that, and when you have that loneliness, what is it that drives you? What is the why for you when you wake up the following morning and you go, right, I'm going to go again today? What is it that drives you to do that, especially as a solo, not having business partners?
Well, it comes back to the passage. I've got a lot of people to prove wrong. The naysayers who think I'm going to fail. I've got way too many people to prove wrong. So, but at the core of it, and I've done a lot of soul searching around my why and what drives me, was in my early days growing up, my dad was always a glass half full kind of guy. So he's always said, it can't be done, it's too difficult. And it used to drive me nuts. So I really wanted to prove him wrong. And I still want to prove him wrong. And so that drives me. But now it's the whole world. It's the ex-employees and the competitors and the critics who say, you're not going to do it. It's I've got way too many people to prove wrong to lie in bed. So pick me up, keep going.
I love that. I suspect that's a personal. I mean, I expect all of us probably have our own personal. For me, I know I get out of bed because it's the joy of creation. The fact that this thing exists and it didn't before, and now it does because of me. I think that's probably what always gets me out of bed, is that desire to create. I remember I probably shared before, but I was always the kid. I used to go riding on a little miniature train at the seaside. My grandparents would take me, and I'd be the one kid. I'd always sit right at the front, and I wouldn't be enjoying the ride. I'd be hanging over the edge, watching the engine go round, just fascinated by it, going, oh, that's amazing. I didn't care. I was, sunshine and beach and looking around. No, I was looking at this engine go. And there's something for me about that joy of creating the machinery that just put something into the world. I know that is kind of what I fall back on in my moments. It's kind of, but look how beautiful it is, and wanting to share that and wanting it to work and wanting it to be better. But I can really equally relate to, do you know what? I can prove this is going to, I am right. This is going to work. This is something that can be real. And I totally get it. And I think that commitment to that journey of self-development, self-understanding, exploration has got to be a big part of the grit that you've brought to your business, Ainga, I'm sure.
And you can become more confident the older you get and the more experienced you get, don't you, with that? It's like in the early days, as entrepreneurs, we always say yes, don't we, to our first customers. We say yes and then work it out how it can be done afterwards. That's generally how it works. But the more experienced we get, the more we can be confident to know, no, that can be done. You say it can't, but I know it can because my experience. So that's the power, isn't it? Because sometimes you speak to people who have been running their businesses for a long time and sometimes they're very drained. But what they forget is that when you've been doing it for a very long time, you've got more experience probably than, you're probably in the top 1 percentile of entrepreneurs globally because you've got that much experience and knowledge of your business and your customer. And nobody can beat you to it. So it can be done. And I sort of tie that in there to go, that's really powerful. Yes, the loneliness is really hard, but actually it can be done. And I know how to do it because I've been doing it a long time and I've failed a lot. So that gives me even more power because I've used my grit and determination. That gives me more power to go, I do know it can be done.
Yeah. And coming full circle is, as I scale my organization, it's about how do I pass on that knowledge and experience to my colleagues and saying, come on, I've done it. You can do it. Let me help you achieve your goals as we spin up, new departments and units within the business and really go for that growth.
And that's rewarding in itself, right? When you can then pass the baton.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid, chaps, we're probably at time. So as always, I will try to summarize some amazing founder hacks from Aingaran Pillai. So Aingaran has had to show grit to lead his business for over 18 years. And he's found by not giving up, maybe the success will find you. What he's learned along the way is that in his experience, culture eats strategy for breakfast. But what does that mean? What does culture do for your business? And what do you do to make the culture? For Aingaran, that was about making sure those bonds were there between himself and his team. Selecting for it at first may be the start, but as you scale up to 60, 70, 80 people, how can you shift that behavior to retain it? For Aingaran, it was about the stories, consistently telling those stories of the grit and determination it took in the early days, the stories of triumph and personal stories that can really inspire. As his business has grown, yes, he remains his chief storyteller, but now his leaders of leaders are doing the same, finding and discovering and sharing their own stories so that culture can persevere. Aingaran was very affected by Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, as many entrepreneurs are. I'm not going to even try to summarize Ben Horowitz's words. They are of such deep resonance for so many entrepreneurs in my experience. I think all we can do is send out some gratitude. Doing what we do is unique. It's terrifying. It's exhilarating. It's a strange choice to be the person who starts a business. And as entrepreneurs, we're all exposed to so much rose-tinted retrospect from those before us that have succeeded. Maybe they've forgotten that moment their guts were boiling in the middle of the marathon. It's a hard task, and many of us will experience everything that Ben's described at different times. But maybe what we take from Horowitz is that there's always tomorrow. And tomorrow may not be better, but tomorrow will be different, because believe it or not, we always have the power to make it so. What Aingaran's had to learn along the way is actually quite how hard it is being a single entrepreneur. Now, those of us that have business with partners may contest it's equally hard having partners and can be just as fractious and terrifying. However, the loneliness perhaps unites us. Doing what we do is a lonely path. For Aingaran, understanding his drivers deeply has sustained him. For him, it's proving those critics wrong and that what he believes can come to pass. Through this, he's found his grit and experience as it grows has helped him to overcome those naysayers, even and particularly those times of failure. As Aingaran now steps into a fully scaled up business, maybe we can do the same. If we're lucky and we're skillful, we get to have the joy of passing the baton to the next generation to lead into whatever the future might throw at us. Some amazing founder hacks, Anga, and all I can say is a massive thank you for those. Quick round of applause for Anga.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Thanks, Anga.
Awesome stuff. Awesome. So it remains to say a huge thank you to you, dear listener, for joining us for another Founder Hacks. I do hope something here has inspired you and you can take this into your business or perhaps into your own life to sustain you in the mission to bring your business to whatever potential it could become. And of course, it remains to say one last time, a massive thank you and a goodbye to Aingaran Pillai.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks everyone for listening. Please share this podcast and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you on the next episode.